She led an ordinary life. I would wake up early, prepare the children's breakfast, do the laundry while listening to the news on TV. She worked as an administrative assistant in a small office and, at 38, didn't consider herself special. Rachel Miller, she was the kind of woman who always took care of everything, except herself. What we're going to tell you here is based on real events, but to protect the privacy of the person involved, all names have been changed. The first changes were subtle, a tiredness that didn't go away even after hours of rest. Then came the strange forgetfulness, as if your mind was disconnecting from its own routine. She stumbled over her words, forgot commitments. Her body felt heavy, without strength, as if she were being slowly pulled to a place from which she could not return. The doctors said it could be stress, depression, maybe some hormonal dysfunction. But Rachel felt like it was something bigger, something no one could see. Exams began to reveal changes, first in hormonal levels, then in the immune system. Soon, the diagnoses came: chronic fatigue, autoimmune syndrome, imminent organ failure. Dry, technical words, spoken by professionals who didn't know what else to do. They just recommended that she accept and prepare for the worst. Rachel tried. You tried to conform, tried to follow medical protocols, therapies, diets, supplements. But inside, it was as if something was silently dying. A type of grief that you didn't cry, because even she didn't know exactly what she was missing. He began to isolate himself. Life outside continued, but inside the house, and especially inside, everything seemed frozen. The days became blurs. And what hurt the most was looking at your children and imagining that they would grow up without remembering your voice. And here the inexplicable begins. Even as her body fell apart, there was a part of Rachel that refused to give up. A spark, an internal whisper, as if her own energy was trying to speak to her, even if no one else was listening. Have you ever felt something similar? As if the world doesn't see you, but inside, something inside you still screams for a way out? Like everything is falling apart, but your soul says it wasn't the end yet? If so, comment below. I felt it. Let's create a space where these pains are not lived in silence. And don't leave this video now. What happened to Rachel isn't just about illness. It's about what her energy did when all seemed lost. Leave a like and subscribe to the channel, because what comes next could change the way you see your own reality. Rachel began to disappear little by little. Not in a physical way, not yet, but it was as if his presence was becoming opaque. Friends noticed. The sparkle in the eyes that used to illuminate the surroundings is gone. And it wasn't just tiredness. It was something else. A sadness that didn't know a name. A tiredness that seemed to come from the soul. The body, yes, was collapsing. But there was something beyond matter. Something that seemed to implode inside. The diagnoses kept coming. Each consultation was a new stamp of uncertainty. Medical words piled up in reports. Unknown, degenerative, progressive, no cure. Rachel looked at those sheets as if they were written in another language, because nothing there seemed to explain what she really felt. It wasn't just physical. It was as if reality itself was becoming heavy, dense, unsustainable. Some nights, she would wake up feeling like she was sinking. It wasn't a dream. It was a presence in the chest, a pain that could not be touched. At these times, she would place her hands over her heart and cry in silence. Not because of the symptoms, but because of everything I seemed to have lost. Life had lost its color. Hope was a distant memory. And the only thing she was sure of was that no one else seemed to understand. But something curious started to happen. Small coincidences. Loose words that she heard in random videos. Phrases that seemed to speak directly to her pain. Your body listens to what you feel. Reality responds to your vibration. You are not just what lives, you are what emanates. At first, Rachel found it all strange, almost absurd, but there was something there that moved her, not in the brain, in the chest. And then, one silent afternoon, she looked in the mirror and asked a question she had never asked herself before. What if this is all a reflection of what's inside me? She didn't know, but in that instant, something began to change. Not on the outside. The symptoms were still there, but on the inside, an imperceptible movement began. She made no promises. He didn't make any plans. But he decided, that day, to stop treating himself as a victim. It wasn't denial. It was something else. A kind of spiritual curiosity. A desire to understand if there was something beyond the pain. Rachel began to pay attention to the words she used. He realized that he was saying all the time, "My illness, my problem, my body is failing." It was as if he had completely identified with it. Then she stopped, not to feel, but to repeat. He began to say quietly, "My body is trying to show me something." And that, as subtle as it seemed, changed everything. Because at that moment, she stopped feeding the fear. It stopped vibrating defeat. And he began, even without understanding it very well, to feel curious. Vibrating listens. A vibrating presence. And for the first time in a long time, Rachel felt something different. It was not a cure. Not yet. But it was a calling. As if his energy, which until then had been dormant, had begun to rise. Have you ever felt like you were living a sentence disguised as a diagnosis? As if someone, in a white coat, wrote the end of your story without even asking how you wanted it to be? Rachel felt it. And maybe, somewhere inside you, this has happened too. It doesn't have to be an illness. Sometimes the diagnosis is emotional. A label you accepted when they said you were too anxious, too sensitive, too dreamy. And you believed. Because when everyone around you repeats that something is true, there comes a time when you stop resisting and start carrying it as if it were part of your name. Rachel believed for a while that her body was broken, that there was something deeply wrong with her. And if you've already believed that too, that there's something in you that needs to be fixed, then maybe this story is the mirror your soul has been waiting for. How many times have you looked in the mirror and thought, "It wasn't supposed to be like this"? How many times have you tried to change everything around you, only to realize that, inside, you still felt the same, stuck in the same thoughts, the same fears, the same emotions that bring you down, even when on the outside you try to appear strong? The truth is that there are a lot of people living like this, with a tired body, a noisy mind, and a silent soul. People who repeat cycles of pain without understanding why, who lives sabotaging himself without knowing he's doing it, who looks at his own life and feels like he is trapped in a reality that he didn't choose, but that he doesn't know how to get out of. And if you're feeling this way right now, I need to tell you something. It's not just you. There are thousands of people feeling like they are living a script they didn't write. People who have dreams, but don't believe they deserve to make them come true. People who want to change, but feel that something invisible always pulls them back. And the question that remains is, what if that something invisible is yourself? Not as guilt, but as frequency, like vibration, like a pattern that was formed over time, from everything you lived, felt, swallowed, and never healed. What if your body is just screaming what your energy can no longer hide? Because that's what no one tells you. Reality isn't just made up of facts. It is made of frequency, of everything you vibrate, even when you don't realize it. Maybe you're there right now, listening to Rachel's story, and feeling like there's something in it that's about you. About your pains that no one saw. About the feeling of carrying something too heavy for too long. And if it's true, then stay here with me. Because there is a part of this story that has not yet been told. And perhaps, in it, lies the key that you have been looking for a long time. Have you ever stopped to think that maybe your body isn't trying to destroy you? May he not be your enemy, but the most honest messenger you have? Rachel didn't know this at first, but little by little, he realized that there was something deeper happening. Her body wasn't just failing. He was responding to something much more subtle, and at the same time, much more powerful than any exam could show. There is a universal law called the law of vibration. She reminds us that nothing in the universe stands still. Everything vibrates. Everything has a frequency, including, and especially you. Thoughts vibrate. Emotions vibrate. Words vibrate. And your body absorbs each of these vibrations as if it were water. Think about that for a moment. Water changes shape depending on the energy it receives. It freezes in the cold, evaporates in the heat, flows when it is free. And your body is made of more than 70% water. This means it reacts to your energy, that each cell listens, feels, responds. When Rachel lived in fear, in frustration, in the feeling of helplessness, her body hardened. The pain increased. The tiredness intensified. It was like she was freezing inside, as if every negative thought pours more ice into your cells. But when, even if timidly, she started to change the vibe, something changed. She didn't need to become a positive person overnight. That would be false. But she began to choose what to feed. He started talking to his own body in a different way. He proceeded to place his hand on his chest and say, "I'm listening. I know you're trying to protect me. I'm not going to fight with you anymore." Little by little, it stopped vibrating war and began vibrating presence. And here's the most important point. Healing isn't just physical. It's vibrational. It's energetic. It's the moment when you understand that what's hurting outside started inside. That the body does not create alone. He just reflects. And the more you vibrate abandonment, rejection, fear, the more the body screams. Not out of malice, but because he's trying to wake you up. The law of vibration does not react to what you want. It responds to what you are, what you feel, what you repeat in silence every day. Therefore, when Rachel began to vibrate listening instead of fear, acceptance instead of anger, the body felt it. It didn't heal immediately, but it softened, like water that starts to thaw. And that's when the memory of the healing started to come back. Because the body knows how to heal itself. He always knew. But it only remembers when you vibrate in the same rhythm as the healing that already exists within you. Rachel didn't heal overnight. It wasn't a sudden miracle, the kind that made headlines in the newspaper. There was no light in the sky, no applause, no immediate before and after. The transformation was silent, almost imperceptible to anyone looking in from the outside. But internally, she was becoming someone else. She began to notice that every time she chose to vibrate fear, her body stiffened. It hurt again. I started to weigh again. It was as if the universe was waiting for her to make a decision. And she took it several times a day. Sometimes it slipped. Sometimes he forgot. But something inside her held firm. A new place where she no longer said my illness, but my listening. And it was in this listening that the changes began to happen. Small at first. A full night's sleep after months of insomnia. An exam with less inflammation. A day without intense pain. A real laugh. And what seemed unlikely began to become routine. Not because Rachel was fooling herself, but because she had aligned herself with something most people ignore, the frequency of healing. Yes, her body started to change. But not because medicine has finally found the right answer. It was because she changed the field where her reality manifested. Because all reality is born from a vibration, and hers had, for a long time, been programmed by fear, rejection, abandonment, and scarcity. When she began to vibrate presence, acceptance, truth, the body simply responded. The doctors didn't know what to say. They couldn't explain how the symptoms were regressing, how biological markers have improved, how a woman who should have been preparing for the end was returning to life, walking alone, smiling lightly. But Rachel knew. She no longer needed external explanations, because inside her there was a serene certainty. She had not beaten the disease. He had stopped feeding her. Today, Rachel walks, not just in the literal sense. She walks with purpose. She dances to the music of life. And, more than that, it teaches other people to do the same. Not as a doctor, not as a guru, but like someone who one day almost disappeared, and who has now truly existed again. She learned that the body was never broken. He was just responding to the pain she carried, the traumas she never named, the beliefs that felt like truth. And when she stopped fighting him and started listening to him, the body stopped screaming. Because finally, it was being understood. What seemed like the end was just the beginning of a new vibration. And the cure, it didn't come as a prescription. It came as a frequency that, little by little, it became. Because, at the end of the day, healing is not about going back to what you were. It's becoming who you really are. And now tell me, what have you been vibrating inside your body every day? Fatigue, fear, guilt, or presence, faith, listening? If this story touched something inside, write the word in the comments, presence, to declare that you are choosing to listen to what your energy is saying. And leave a like on this video and subscribe to the channel, because this helps keep this content alive, vibrating, reaching those who also need to remember that the body doesn't scream for no reason. And in the next episode, the woman who cured the feeling of scarcity, and the universe responded with more than she dreamed of asking for. Sometimes when the vibration changes, abundance comes louder than fear imagined.